supposedly while sleeping, he uttered the word divorce 3 times, and the wife went to court to say, does that basically still apply even though he was speaking in his sleep? Do you know what the verdict was, Bill?
Yes.
It does apply. Doesn't that show that the male is dominant all the time, even in his sleep?
Exactly. I hadn't thought of that, but yes.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are approaching our halftime break. When we come back, we will continue along the discussion of the implications of Sharia law. This time, we will focus our attention on the treatment of Christians and Jews.
Pressure slowly building. An explosion that shocked the world. A coastline forever changed. The oil impossible to remove. Nothing could destroy it. Until the source was found, until that source was sealed. To uncover the source of Islamic terror, read the Qur'an Dilemma, Islam Unplugged.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the second half of our episode, The Islamic Dilemma. In the first half, myself and my guest, Bill Warner, we were discussing the implications of Sharia law as it relates to women and as it relates to family law and other relationships. We are going to turn our attention in this second half on the treatment of people of other faith, and in particular, people who follow the Bible as the Christians and the Jews. Before I do that, Bill, I still want to emphasize an important aspect of Sharia law that we have emphasized and mentioned a couple of times already. Sharia law does not consider itself to be equal to any law or inferior to any law. It is basically superior to any law, including the law of the land.
Correct. You know, the word Islam means submission, really. And what we see is that Sharia law is the perfect expression of this idea of submission. Our civilization is to submit in all of its customs and laws to that of Islam.
I want to direct my viewers to 2 quotations that they basically can go to the report I shared with them before, Sharia, the threat to America, and they can basically see that these quotations were even listed in there. One quotation comes from the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood. His name is Hassan al-Banna. Okay? This is what he says. It is the nature of Islam to dominate, and I want to underline the word dominate, not to be dominated. So the nature of Islam, the way Islam is about, the religion of Islam's intent is to dominate and not to be dominated. He goes on to say, to impose its law, meaning the Islamic law, on, and I emphasize, all nations, not necessarily Islamic nations, to impose it. Notice there is a way of compelling others to accept the Islamic law. Let me ask you this question, Bill. If you want to impose your ideology on someone else, what are the means that you are going to use to get that across?
Well, there's different means. You could try persuasion and even add a little deceit to it. Then you can have threats, demands, and then finally, as it matures, you can have violence.
In fact, you know, some have even called the method that you've just mentioned as the first step as a stealth jihad.
Precisely.
In other words, you basically can try to go to a culture and to try to infiltrate this culture, build yourself, and begin to impose your thoughts and ideas and ideology slowly and gradually until you are in a powerful position. However, if you faced with resistance the whole time, or even at some point, you can revert back to the visible jihad, if I want to call it that, and that includes the idea of killing people. Suicide bombs is just an example of what goes on, or even military threats or attacks on civilians. Now, we want to take a look at the rest of his quotation. To extend its power to the entire planet. Notice, we're talking about the whole universe, the whole planet. We're not talking about expanding a territory of one country to take a territory of another country, which is still wrong. No, we're talking about imposing a law to all nations and extending its power, and that goes along with the idea of military power, physical jihad, because peaceful means are not going to extend your ideology and your power. He didn't say our ideology, he said we want to extend our might, our power basically, to the entire planet.
Complete hegemony.
How do you feel about this bill? Does that give you a sense of peace?
It gives me a sense of feeling threatened, particularly when in America today, we see that Sharia is advancing in little steps here and there. Things are done because, well, that would offend Muslims, so we won't do that anymore. Or, well, yes, we'll tolerate, if they want to pray at school, we'll give them a special room. And each of these things seems small and unimportant. But looking at a long-range plan, I come back to the idea that this is the thin end of the longest wedge in the world. And of course, the other thing that's appalling is that people, the non-Muslims, don't want to look and see the true nature of Sharia. They want to deny that.
Well, I'm hoping that whatever we have shared so far will at least prompt them to look into Sharia law and maybe even go and investigate our sources and investigate other sources and begin to develop a different opinion, a non-pacifist opinion. We're not asking, by the way, I want to emphasize, we're not telling people Muslims are bad people. What we're showing here that Muslims are the victim of these kind of laws and teachings that are imposed on them. If someone like Al-Banna is saying that the nature of Islam is to impose its law on other nations, imagine what would the nature of Islam be among its own followers. Obviously, it's a matter of imposing it on its own followers. So we want to emphasize that Muslims are the victim of these kind of ideologies. We're not asking you to hate the Muslim. We're asking you actually to continue to love the Muslims and care for them, but at the same time, there's a line that has to be drawn between respecting the law of the land and allowing other ideologies to be imposed on us. And in this case, an ideology that considers itself to be supreme over all others. I want to share another quotation. This time, the quotation came from the foundation called the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE. This was one of the co-founders and a board chairman back in the year 1998. This quotation also can be found in the same report that deals with Sharia. Again, the report is called Sharia, the Threat to America. It's report of Team B2. This is what the co-founder and the chairman at that time says. Islam isn't in America to be equal to any other faith, but to become dominant. And I want to circle the word dominant. So, Islam is not in another country, and this time it's America, that's where he resides, or at least that's where he made his statement. And it says that to be equal to any other faith, but to become dominant. Then he goes on to say, the Quran should be the highest authority in America. To have the Quran become the highest authority, that means the Quran will trump the Constitution of the United States.
Exactly.
In other words, what the Quran teaches should be the law of the land in his mind,
right,
not what the Constitution of the United States teaches.
And he's quoting pure doctrine. He is not making this up. These are the words of a good Muslim. He's giving us the Islamic truth.
Absolutely, and he goes on to say, and Islam, the only accepted religion on earth. And this concurs with what we just shared in chapter 3, verse 85, that the only religion acceptable to God will be Islam and all others are losers. So he is saying Americans are losers unless they follow the Quran and its teaching. And that's basically the summary of these kind of statements.
By the way, some people listening to this will go, oh, he's just an extremist. What we call in the media an extremist is someone who is simply adhering to Sharia law. This man is not making this up. This is not some creative idea. He is merely telling us what the doctrine really is.
And to his defense, I want to say that he is sharing the truth about Islam.
That's what I mean.
He is not making up anything about Islam.
No.
And certainly, if anyone were to tell me right now that I've taken this statement out of its context, please tell me what is in here that indicates that it's taken out of its context.
Indeed, in context, it's a perfect fit with the entire body of Islamic doctrine.
Absolutely. Well, Bill, let's talk now about the treatment of Islam towards people of other faith. Other people of other faiths are called kafirs,
Right.
meaning people who are infidels. That's the Arabic word for infidels. People who associate other gods, for instance, with the God of Islam, or don't even worship at all. Should an infidel be afraid under Sharia law?
For many reasons. One of the things that is distressing when you look inside of a Sharia text is that you see Muhammad subjugated all of his neighbors, one after the other. And once he had subjugated Arabia, he moved north into Syria and Christian territory. So his entire life was spent attacking his neighbors and subjugating them. And that's what we see that is built into the Sharia law, this subjugation of both Christian and Jew. There's a word which we're going to come to called dhimmi, D-H-I-M-M-I, and it means a Christian or a Jew who has agreed to be politically subjugated. And this is found in a Sharia text.
Absolutely, and certainly the discussion about the dhimmis will have to basically take its own course in a separate show, simply because we're approaching, again, the end of our episode. And I want to just show a couple of quick passages from the Quran. On the screen, you're going to see a verse from chapter 5 of the Quran, verse 51. It says this: "O you who believe," talking to the Muslims, meaning, "O you who Muslims, do not take the Jews and the Christians for friends." And the word friends, by the way, here in Arabic actually talks about taking them as supporters and protectors, not just friends like relationship. We're talking about friends in terms of strength, coming to support me, military support, for instance, and things of that nature. For they are friends but of each other's, because the other word friends here talk about the relationship now between the Jews and the Christians. In other words, what this verse is saying, that Christians and Jews are friends of each other against the number one enemy for them, which is Islam. I want to also show another verse. This one is found in chapter 9, verse 29, and we alluded to it already, and we said that here is a command that if you are a Christian or a Jew, that the Muslim must fight you. Fight those who believe not in God or Allah, nor the last day, nor hold that which is forbidden by Islam and basically by Allah and His apostle, and nor acknowledge the religion of truth, even if they be of the people of the book, Christians and Jews. So in other words, just for you becoming a Christian or being born a mere Christian or a Jew, any of these categories will basically allow a Muslim to fight you, antagonize you, not treat you well, and the least we can come out from this verse is that you are inferior in status to the Muslim person, that he should not treat you fairly, that there is no freedom for you to choose what you need to worship. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been watching our show on the topic of Sharia law. And you've watched our previous episodes as well on the same topic. My hope and my desire that we have shared with you enough information to help you discern for yourself that Sharia law is not a law that you would want to desire to exist in your community or in your state or in your country. As always, I encourage you to go to our website, send us your thoughts, your questions, and your comments. Until we meet again in our next show, I am your host, Al Fadi, and have yourself a mega blessing.